Hi, Govanen. Welcome to the Tolkien Lore Channel. I'm the Tolkien Geek, and in the wake of my debunking of CinemaSins, everything wrong with the Lord of the Rings videos, people have asked me to do the Hobbit movies as well, and part of me has been really reluctant to do it, partially because I just didn't really want to watch the Hobbit movies again to, get into that, and also because it's like I kind of feel like they deserve almost any criticism they get. Well, I finally took a look at the first CinemaSins video on The Hobbit for the Unexpected Party movie, and boy was I wrong. So we're totally going to debunk CinemaSins all over again. And by the way, for those of you who complained about my Fellowship of the Ring and other Lord of the Rings videos debunking CinemaSins in those, complaining that I referred to the books too much, the argument then and the argument now is that CinemaSins breaks their own rule. There is no "the books don't matter" because CinemaSins refers to the books. And, well, we'll get there when we get there in this particular video, but we're going to do the Unexpected Party on this one, and then we're going to have follow-ups on the next two. But at least in the Unexpected Party, we've got, some book reference that you can't use that argument, so just lay off. Just a quick reminder before we get started, CinemaSins does use language, and even though they bleep it out, you can still mostly tell what it is, and they have subtitles on this video. So, if you've got anyone with sensitive ears, make sure maybe watch this video outside their presence.
35 seconds of logos.
So for this first one, dumb, I guess, but like every movie has lots of logos at the beginning nowadays, so why is this movie special?
Sure, I'm glad Ian Holm is here to remind me of that unpopular trilogy of movies that came out more than 10 years ago.
Here they're complaining about Ian Holm being in a movie referring back to the Lord of the Rings movies, and I'm like, why is this a problem? You're obviously going to have connections here. It's impossible not to, and in fact, I think the best way to have done this movie would have been to use kind of the unfinished tales motif that Christopher Tolkien brings out, which is that Gandalf is kind of talking to the hobbits post Lord of the Rings, explaining kind of what was going through his mind, and how it was really all about getting rid of Smaug and making sure he wouldn't be a participant in the more the grander events going around. But, like, you really expect no connections in this movie to the Lord of the Rings?
Peter Jackson only teases Dragon even though he knows you bought the ticket expecting to see Dragon.
Okay, so they're complaining that Smaug is only teased here, but really, did anybody going into this movie expect to see Smaug in the first of 3 movies about the Hobbit? I mean, the way they broke these movies up was terrible, and, whose fault that is you can get into, but really? I mean, like, there's no way in a 3-part series on The Hobbit you're going to get anywhere near Erebor in the first one.
This is a lot of exposition even for a Lord of the Rings movie.
I'll give them this one. There is a lot of exposition in this movie and, the Hobbit trilogy as a whole. Balin and his entire character throughout these movies is almost sub-narrator. It's kind of bad, but there's ways to get the exposition in, and then there's other ways to get the exposition in. You've got to have some level of explanation for the background of the story. Could we complain about the specific way they did it? You can, but I mean, like, is it really a big deal that they did it this way as opposed to a different way? I personally wouldn't have gone with this route, but I don't think it's a sin, certainly.
If he's writing all this to Frodo, why does he need to do the whole "it began in a hole in the ground" crap?
Who says he's writing it to Frodo?
Oh, hey Frodo, what are you doing in this movie? Not a thing.
What do you mean, what's Frodo doing in this movie? We've already seen in the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring that Bilbo is writing this on the same day that Gandalf arrives and meets Frodo. So the fact that he is now sitting down to write it in this movie as a frame makes it obvious that it's going to be the same exact day, so we kind of would actually expect to see Frodo in this movie.
This is a terrible way to store bread.
Okay, yeah, that's probably not the best way to store bread, but whatever.
This redheaded guy is instantly replaced by this other dude.
Yeah, they called a legitimate switch up there.
Aragorn Jr.
Yeah, I suppose Thorin kind of is like a replacement Aragorn. Young, good-looking. I mean, Viggo Mortensen wasn't young, but they didn't make him look old in the movie. But yeah, I mean, and this is actually a complaint I have about this. Thorin and Fili and Kili, particularly the dark-haired one, who's I forget which is which, they make them look not very dwarf-like, precisely to give them sex appeal, and I think that was a bad decision. So yeah, I'll give them this one.
Dwarf doors are invisible.
Yeah, except when a huge dragon wants to come in.
Now, nobody thinks that all dwarf doors are invisible. The main gate of Erebor is a main gate. It's kind of designed to be obvious.
Stay out late. Come home after dark, trailing mud and twigs and fireflies.
Gandalf is basing all of his faith in Bilbo on things that all kids do at that age.
All kids? Do you actually know what Hobbit kids do at that age? Hobbits are not humans. They have very different habits.
If the dwarves spent as much time training to fight dragons as they did singing, this trilogy would be over by now.
Training? You want to see the dwarves training to fight dragons in this movie? You realize most of the movie is actually about the journey, right? Like, they don't instantly get to Erebor and fight a battle. And, like, this complaint makes no sense. It literally makes no sense.
Are the dwarves supposed to have blown out this candle that's still smoking like 3 seconds ago before leaving, or does Peter Jackson not know how candles work?
Well, yeah, actually, considering that the dwarves were up early, they very likely had the candle lit and blew it out before they left.
It takes 43 minutes for this film's actual adventure to begin, and the first thing they do is go to sleep and tell more boring dwarf stories.
Now, again, this does get back to the problem of the movie having too much exposition, and in part here it's due to the fact that they have to bring in this entire subplot with Azog and all the things that go on with him, and yeah, they're kind of dragging it out a little bit. But frankly, when I first watched the movie, I didn't see it as a huge problem that they went into more exposition here. Is it kind of annoying? Yeah, but it's more annoying because of the way they screw up the story than because of the fact that they do what they're complaining of in CinemaSins.
He's a gentle soul who prefers the company of animals to others. He keeps a watchful eye over the vast forest land.
So he's the Unabomber.
I honestly don't understand what the complaint here is.
Still a better death scene than Miranda Tate's in Dark Knight Rises.
Okay. That's a sin? I mean, like, they're saying it's better than, and they're saying it's I don't know.
Even for a kid's movie, this is pretty f***ing ridiculous.
Yes, it is ridiculous, and there are a lot of things about this movie that can be complained about as being ridiculous. There are a lot of scenes that are completely unrealistic and silly. This is not high up on the scale, however, in my opinion.
No horses were harmed in the making of the scenes that have no horses.
I'm not sure if this is a joke about the fact that they're ponies and not horses, or the fact that they're CGI, which, either way, I don't understand the complaint.
These ropes aren't remotely tight or secure.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, that's not hugely surprising, is it? I mean, they don't need to be particularly tight or secure. I mean, the trolls are surrounding them, and they've already managed to capture them all once. And do you really want all the dwarves that are actually there tied up really tight? Because in real life, that would be extremely uncomfortable.
While the weed smoking sort of helps explain this crazy wizard character, I'm not sure it fits a kid's movie full of snot and fart jokes. I'm just saying.
Now here, I'll give it to him again. This idea that smoking gives you like a high, which is kind of what Radagast is portraying, is a little uncomfortable for me. I don't like it, and frankly, the entire character of Radagast I don't particularly like. Radagast is not a joke character. He's a very serious character. He doesn't end up being a successful wizard in the sense that he fulfills his purpose in Middle-earth, but like, he's not meant to be this whatever this Radagast is.
They will outrun you.
These are Roscabel rabbits. I'd like to see them try.
On the one hand, this guy just smoked weed, but on the other hand, he knows a lot more about rabbits than I do, so let him go.
There's a complaint here.
Radagast immediately forgets his objective is to lead the orcs away from the dwarves and just goes in circles.
this is dumb, and I can show you why it's dumb. You can actually see in the scene that they fast forward through where, and I'll show you the still image just so you can kind of get an idea. There is a point where he is trying to lead them away, and orcs cut him off, and he has to veer. So here's that still image. You can see it here. So, and if you watch the scene itself in the movie, you can see this. It's like he's not just going in circles. He's trying to get away from the orcs, which are trying to cut him off because they're like all over the place.
Bilbo's sword isn't glowing despite the fact that there are tons of orcs around.
I'm actually not convinced that that sword is not glowing. It looks like it has a slight bluish tint. Bear in mind they're in bright, broad daylight here. And the only times we've ever seen these swords glowing in the past have been like in caves and darkness. And even then they aren't super bright. So, I don't know, maybe I'm just imagining that bluish tint there, but I mean, if that's your complaint, then I mean, they've already not had Glamdring and Orcrist glow, which they'll get to later, by the way.
Man, Middle-earth simply did not believe in handrails.
Didn't believe in handrails. Well, they didn't have OSHA, I guess. But, I mean, there's actually defensive value to not having handrails on a thin walkway if, for example, you have a giant door that's easy to break into, as we saw at the beginning of the movie. It's really easy to defend a position across a narrow way with no wall because you can shoot archers, arrows down the middle of it and not have any problem hitting your target.
Is this the same spot where Frodo got stabbed in Fellowship? Are you really just cramming in every single possible connection to the other trilogy that you can?
Here again, I'll give them a little bit of credit because it is just a little over the top how much this trilogy as a whole and this movie, kind of in particular, makes connections with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They really do bring in like as many possible references as they can. And on the one level, it's kind of like, oh, cool fan service, but on another level, it's like, know when to stop. So, yeah, this is a bit much.
It's his excessive consumption of mushrooms.
Jeez, the guy smokes weed and does shrooms? I think maybe all it takes to be a wizard in Middle-earth is a drug habit and a robe.
Okay, now, I mean, here I would say that the real sin was having Saruman even mention mushrooms, at all, because that just makes drug jokes. And that's really not in place in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. It doesn't make any sense. Here, their complaint seems more, aimed at the fact that all it takes to be a wizard is, a drug habit, basically. It's like, well, which wizards do we actually see engaging in a drug habit? I mean, for one thing, when we see Gandalf smoking, we don't see him going the whole like Radagast does, and Saruman never smokes that we see. And as far as we know, neither of them eat mushrooms. So, I mean, they're just pointing out the weirdness of Radagast here, but, I mean, they don't even seem to take the complaint in the logical direction.
Because there is none.
Is Saruman supposed to already be evil here, or is he just a dick? Yeah.
Why is this a sin? I'm not exactly sure. Because you could take it either way, and either way it's, perfectly, within the realm of the story to make sense. Saruman in the books, and don't worry, I'm getting there, Saruman in the books actually was always kind of a proud and, not willing to take guff from anybody type of person. But also by this point, if you read the Unfinished Tales, he's probably also trying to find the ring for himself, and so he is trying to mislead everybody. So you could take it either way, and there's no reason within the movie not to take it one of those two ways, given that we've already all seen the Fellowship of the Ring, and we know that Saruman turns traitor, and therefore theoretically has been kind of a traitor for at least some time before that, so it's totally plausible that he's already a traitor now.
Yeah, this always seems to happen. I start playing Final Fantasy VII, but I end up playing Shadow of the Colossus.
I suppose here they're complaining about the fact that there's these stone giants in, the Misty Mountains. I guess that's the only thing I can figure, but stone giants are in the book.
So the goblins built this entire collapsible floor just in case somebody came by and wanted to sleep here for a while?
Granted, the way that they set this up is a little goofy in the movie, that, there's these trapdoors and whatnot, but it's not that far off from the way it happens in the book, where in fact it's just a crack in the back of the wall. So, I mean, it's not hugely different. They just, granted, it is, like I said, kind of dumb that they did it as, booby trap floors. So, half credit, I guess.
This fall would definitely kill Bilbo if this movie wasn't taking place in a physics-free zone.
Yeah, a lot of really, really crazy things happen in the Goblin Tunnels, and this is one of them. Although, in fairness, they have Bilbo land in like a giant mushroom patch, so squidgy, I guess.
Man, no one tell Radagast about this place.
Note the mushroom patch.
Down in the deep of Goblin Tunnels.
I'm not exactly sure what this old man came rolling home is a complaint about, other than the general size of the Goblin King. But, yeah, I mean, like, he's a Goblin King and he lives underground and he's ugly, and why is this supposed to be a sin? I don't get it.
Didn't Gandalf say,
The blade is of elvish make, which means it will glow blue when orcs or goblins are nearby.
and didn't Elrond say that this sword was of elvish make? So then why isn't this blade glowing near all these goblins? Or Gandalf's sword, Glamdring, also made by elves.
Yes, this is a common problem in both the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies. The only sword that actually glows blue is Sting, even though Glamdring and Orcrist and Sting were all elvish swords that were supposed to glow blue. Peter Jackson actually acknowledges the mistake in the extra materials, in the behind-the-scenes stuff, in I don't remember, I think it's the Fellowship of the Ring extended edition extra stuff, where he talks about the fact that they kind of messed up with that, and he passes it off with a joke saying, we ran out of glue blowy material, or whatever, however we put it, I forget. But yeah, this is a genuine mistake on the production, and it was annoying to me at the time. It's still kind of annoying to me now. I don't care that much, but it is a legit point.
Rings don't land on fingers like this, unless you're in Middle-earth, where it happens in the first movie of every trilogy.
In case these guys haven't noticed, the ring isn't completely inert, so is it really so far to reach to say that it could do weird stuff? Although I will grant the fact that, doing exactly the same kind of ring falling on finger thing that they did in the Fellowship of the Ring is yet another, tie back to the original movies that's completely unnecessary.
You can totally tell where the video game and the movie sort of became one.
Yeah, this is actually one of the scenes that I find absurd in the movie, and so I'll give them this one, because you got 13 dwarves and a wizard running through, and the wizard, Gandalf, really isn't playing a whole lot of role in fighting side by side with the dwarves, because they're all strung out along these walkways, and the dwarves are literally just whacking goblins left and right, as if there's really no difficulty in fighting off hordes of bad guys. And it's like, in the Fellowship of the Ring, at least they had the decency to make it look like the Fellowship was doomed when the horde of orcs surrounded them in Moria. Here, it's like, they only got captured because they were taken by surprise, and now that they've, got their weapons and they're on the run, they can just totally take the entire army of the goblins all by themselves. It is dumb.
See, no physics allowed in Middle-earth. We're supposed to care about this perilous journey that isn't remotely perilous for anyone.
Granted, this is another one of those scenes that is really unrealistic and dumb.
This kill is lucky, but this kill is downright inexcusable.
Well, not necessarily a kill, because it didn't look like he did more than enough to knock him out, but, I mean, it does kind of go to the unrealism and silliness of the combat scenes in these movies.
How does this blow not take his face right off?
You could take it that way, but I'm kind of more inclined to say that he took it on the chest. Now, the real problem is not even so much that, because even with a chest hit, with a mace that large, moving that fast, being swung by an orc as big as Azog, it still would have cut through his armor and just totally wrecked his ribcage. So, wherever it hit him, it's a legit point that it didn't do any more damage than it did.
A minute ago, Azog wanted Thorin to himself, then he changes his mind and orders a henchman to do it, giving Bilbo just enough time to save the day.
Okay, granted, the way they set up the save is a little bit ham-fisted, but I will say he already has kind of taken out Thorin by himself, and he's just having his underling do the dirty work of actually killing him, because he doesn't want to be bothered with the small stuff. At least that's how I took it. So I don't find that part of it per se contradictory to what he said before. And I mean, if you really want to get nitpicky about it, he didn't even fight Thorin. His warg did half of the fighting for him. So even there, it's like, he obviously isn't about mano-a-mano combat here. That's not really his point.
Eagles? Again? Is that the only way Tolkien knows how to resolve things?
Here it is. Is that the only way Tolkien knows how to resolve things? Don't tell me the books don't matter. These people are referencing Tolkien, the author of the book, not Peter Jackson, the director of the movie. So, all you people who want to complain that referring to the books is not relevant, blah, 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 CinemaSins does it too, and I really don't care. So, anyway, point being here, yes, do the Eagles get used a little overmuch? Maybe. Tolkien would have even admitted that maybe he liked the Eagles a little too much. Probably he liked them a little too much because they are a sign of Providence acting in the background, which arguably is exactly what's happening here in the story. The Eagles are rescuing them because Providence wants their quest to succeed. It is certainly interesting if you read the book, again, don't complain if I mention the book, that many of the scrapes they get into, they end up having extraordinary luck. And Gandalf at the end of the story will tell Bilbo, do you really think you managed all that by luck? You're just a small person in a wide world after all. So, yeah, the Eagles are going to get involved. That's, I mean, and by the way, this is literally the first time that they've gotten involved in this story, and we've got 2 whole extra movies to go. So, like, the Eagles have gotten involved in total, if we're watching these movies in chronological order of when they were produced, they get involved once in the Fellowship of the Rings to rescue Gandalf, and once at the end at the, the Battle of the Black Gate, and I'm pretty sure that's it. And then after that, there's nothing.
This rock looks like a bear. What is this, Cars?
They think that looks like a bear? I'm not seeing it.
This is the single stupidest place the Eagles could possibly have dropped off the dwarves, and now they have to make a dangerous climb down a steep rock.
Well, we never actually get a good view of this rock from all angles. Can we really tell that it's hard to get down from there? Plus, what we know about the Eagles is, and by the way, they referenced this in the Return of the King video that they did, which I also pointed out how dumb that was if you're going to go the whole books don't matter route. Eagles don't like to go, around men and whatnot because they can get shot at. And so it makes sense that they're going to drop them off high where there's nobody to shoot at them.
Rock. Wait, that's the Lonely Mountain? Well, why didn't the Eagles just fly them all the way there? Take them like 15 minutes. I mean, seriously, what do the Eagles have to be doing right now that was unimportant enough to stop doing it to come rescue the dwarves, but that they couldn't also spend a few more minutes to fly them all the way to their fucking destination?
So can you actually tell how far away that is? That's a long way. Nowhere near their homes in the Misty Mountains, and again, they don't like to go around settlements because they don't want to get shot at. So by my count, we actually had like maybe 4 or 5 legitimate complaints. Anyway, that's my debunking of their first Everything Wrong With for the Hobbit trilogy. The other 2 videos are much longer, so I'm probably going to skip a lot of the stuff in there that's just dumb, but I will get to both of those too, so stay tuned for those. In the meantime, I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please like it and share it around, and you can follow me on Twitter at JRRTLore for occasional Tolkien-related trivia questions. Please do subscribe to the channel if you want to get more Tolkien content. Don't forget that bell icon. You can also find me on Rumble now, in addition to YouTube, and you can support me over at Patreon. Until the next time, I'm the Tolkien Geek signing out for the Tolkien Lore channel. Namadia.